our two last presentations, our presenters today, I must say, are very courageous. They have prepared a lot. And probably after today, they never will want to see us ever again. Because of so much pressure on them. And I don't blame them. They did have to do a lot of work. So it's not just all fun, but also work. But I do want to say that all of them have done a great job. I think even though they were probably under a lot of stress, and they were probably swearing at us and blaming us and doing all sorts of stuff. But I do think it is an experience that's worth experiencing. For those of you that are thinking of applying, and I do encourage that you think hard about applying to our program. It's true, you will do some work, but at the same time you will have gains as well. And we think this is a great opportunity to become a student again. After being in a teaching position for so long, you know, it's great to be in a student position, just to see what it is like again. So I do want to hope to see some of you in our next program that's coming up this year. And we will have exciting programs as we'll be going to 3 different places. Although that might be more difficult for us to manage, but still, we hope it will be a fun experience for you guys as well as pressure. Okay? And giving a presentation is never easy, like all of you. Although you do kind of presentation every day, but in this kind of occasion, in front of a group of strangers, a whole bunch of teachers who are always evaluating other people, it is not easy. And so I want to really thank all the presenters today on a fine job so far, and I'm sure the 2 last one will be great as well. And so without any further delay, I know you all want to get home quickly, get it done, and go. Let's welcome our first presenter today and for this session. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for staying with us till now. Okay? Although I do prefer you go home and take some rest. Sorry. I should talk about my topic first. Well, it's learning English for communication, listening and speaking activities for upper intermediate students. This is the title for my action plan. And why do I want to do this action plan? Of course, because Auntie and you made me to. But that's only part of the reason. A more important reason is that I encountered problems in teaching. Actually, I have a lot of problems, but the major ones may be summed up as follows. First, I've been troubled for years by the discrepancy between my students' knowledge in English and their performance in speaking and listening. Most of them can get good grades in written tests, but they have great trouble when it comes to speaking and listening. In other words, communicating in English. Well, I'm not really contented or satisfied with that, because aren't we learning English in order to communicate? So I've tried to give them more chance to practice speaking. But then I've also been discouraged by their response, because most of them would act like I'm wasting their time. Some of and others may be shy and insecure, and so they would, speak very little or switch back, or say tune back to the Chinese channel very soon. Okay? Despite my efforts to apply the training of speaking and listening in my classroom, it is even more difficult with, the present teaching environment. I mean, the big class size with varied levels of students. So when I was given the chance to go to Canada, I, kind of hoped that I can get some helpful inspirations from Canadian teachers. And I did. We attended quite a few courses there. And in one conducted by Miss Andrea Mackenzie, she said something that struck a chord with me. Here are her words. Learning is not a spectator sport. Many times we teachers are just like performing monkeys. We take great pains, lecturing, explaining things, performing, and even cracking jokes, while our students just sit there, listen, watch, trying very hard not to doze off or not to be caught dozing off. And after the class is over, both sides are exhausted. So, can there be a different way of conducting the class? According to Ms. Mackenzie, the teacher's job is to select the best activities to make learning happen and engage students in active learning. So with this in mind, when we were there and after I came back, we, as a group, we worked out some intervention steps in order to tackle the problems. Probably what we need is more interesting and effective activities to help our students break their barriers that prevent them from speaking up in class. So our activities should be able to achieve these goals. First of all, to enlarge and activate their vocabulary. After all, without vocabulary, as one of our presenters just said, it is almost impossible to express themselves. And sometimes they do have the vocabulary, but they just cannot bring the words out of their word bank. So we need to give them chances to, activate the vocabulary. And second, probably an improved pronunciation is necessary. Weak pronunciation not only prevents students from speaking up, but also hinders their listening comprehension. For example, if a student cannot tell the difference between bit and beat, or bet and bait and bat, how can he get the right message when he hears these words appear in sentences? Therefore, it is a must to improve their pronunciation. And I'm sorry to say, pronunciation seems to be neglected in the junior high school teaching. And the third one is increase authentic language exposure. As far as I know, most of the senior high schools today spend 30 minutes at most listening to English broadcasts. And of course, a lot more don't even spend that time. In other words, they have so limited exposure to authentic language. Then how can they improve their speaking and listening? As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. So we have to give them more chances to speak and listen. And that way, perhaps, they will, practice not only makes perfect, it also gives, builds up confidence. Since you do it again and again, you kind of get used to doing it. Then maybe your confidence will be boosted up. And that will lead to their willingness to speak up in class. And it becomes a good cycle. Last but not least, with the varied levels in the big class, those students on both extremes are kind of sacrificed. So we kind of hoping for finding a way that can, serve the need or meet the need of individual students, especially those of lower and higher levels. That is there a way that they can be the master of their own learn English at their own pace? That's our goal, and these are our goals. So my action plan will included, I divided them into 3 parts. In-class activities. Within the frame of textbooks, I did vocabulary storytelling and some other textbook-based speaking and listen activities. And this one aims to, activate their, or as the previous presenter said, to retain their vocabulary. And the second part is, outside the frame of textbooks, we did CNN student news, vowel drills, and 1-minute short speech. As you can see, this is to increase authentic language exposure, and this is to improve pronunciation, especially the vowels. We think vowels matter a lot, probably more than the consonants in terms of understanding. And to give them more chances to speak, I did 1-minute short speech per week, every week. But that is not enough. They need to do some more at home, unfortunately. After class independent learning, they are required to do listening tests on the website, and students were also required to keep a vocabulary book on their own. And this is to, enlarge their vocabulary, but they can do it at their own pace and catering to their own level, according to their own level. Before I elaborate on these activities, let me quickly talk about the class setting. There are, on the average, 40 students in every class in my school. This year I'm teaching 4 classes of 11th graders, 2 of natural science and 2 of humanities. And most of their students fall in the category of intermediate and upper intermediate levels. But with 5% to 10% falling behind, remaining at pre-intermediate. You may not believe it, but trust me, it's true. It's the case. Although it's Goshen Senior High School, there are still students falling behind. And as for the class hours, they have 5 hours of English and 1 hour of English listening and speaking. For the humanities group. And that's the time, that's the class hour I'm going to use to implement my intervention steps. Okay? Before the unfolding of those intervention steps, I did some pre-action assessment. I gave students 2 tests. One is the listening, and we used simulated GPD listening test for intermediate level. I didn't give students the answers as well as the result because we were going to use the same test later as the post-action. So I deliberately kept the answers from them so that the test can kind of be still a new test for them, since they didn't know the answers. As for the pronunciation, we chose Dr. Seuss' Green Eggs and Ham, and we revised it. By revising, we made it shorter and tried to modify it a little bit to include all the vowels. And it looks like this. And the process goes like this. Every student will have a grading sheet belonging to her, and they took turns coming to me reading this poem while I mark their mistakes. I underlined the mispronounced vowels while she was reading the poem. And after everyone took her turn, I, counted everyone's mistakes and marked it on a vowel chart. Then I give each person's vowel chart back to the owner, so that she knows which vowels to work on during the following semester. But I did not give her the poem because I did not want her to practice at home again and again. So that when I did the post-test, she was perfect with it, but she may not be able to pronounce as well when she reads some other texts. Okay, that's the way we did the pre-action assessment. Now it's time for me to talk about the activities one by one. For those regular activities, are basically done on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Especially the two most important ones, vowel drills and CNN student news. They were done alternately every other week. For vowel drills, I taught one minimal pair every other week. First of all, I would demonstrate. Which one is it? Where's? No, not this one. Sorry. Okay, anyway. I will first of all demonstrate how to pronounce those vowels, and then I would introduce.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Campus Update. Many exciting things taking place at our school. Yes, there is hope. You will become stronger, faster, smarter, more attractive.
I introduced some video clips from YouTube as learning resources for them, so that students can practice the pronunciation at home with the aid of these video clips. But this one is about E.
Okay, E. You gotta smile
you
real
can see
big
how
when you practice
the native
it.
speaker pronounced the
Never
word.
be sad when you practice E. Here's some common mistakes. Deep is not good. Feet is not equal to
Okay.
fit.
Let's pause here. The idea is like this. Okay. And then I will also employ some tasks or games to reinforce students' knowledge as well as to access their performance. For example, most of the time I would choose a tongue twister from this website. Actually, you can just type in the keyword tongue twister, and there will be a lot of useful websites popping up. And this one is called Tongue Twister for ESL. Anyway, I chose an appropriate one and have students read and practice a couple of times. Then I ask them to go home and practice it. Then the next week, we will play Time Bomb. This is an interesting game. I bring the time up, not really a time bomb, sorry. I bring a timer to the classroom, put it in the box and set a time. Then students will take turns reading the tongue twister or any designated sentences while passing this bomb from one to another. And when the bomb explodes, when time's up, it will. Then the person holding the bomb has to do a harmless consequence. Here comes my favorite part. Among the consequences my students have done, one is go to the English office and say loudly to all the other teachers, "My English teacher is the most beautiful woman in the world. That's one. And another one that I'm very proud of is that I have them write with their butt the sentence, I love English. As you can see, students had a lot of fun doing this, while at the same time hopefully they learn something. Okay? And another game I often use is called Snap and Clap Rhymes. This is, if you have watched the variety show called 天才冲冲冲, then you may be familiar with this. It goes like this. Sorry. Fall. It depends on which vowel I'm teaching. So suppose I'm teaching fall, then I will begin with fall, and the next person will have to fall or fall. They have to produce a word, a rhyming word with fall. And I have students doing groups of 4, so that they just have fun and do this and panic when they fail to come up with words. Okay? If you think it's too difficult for your students, then an easier variation is I say you say game. The beginners say, usually it's time. I say fat, you say, then you have to produce a word, a rhyming word. I say fat, Angel, you say fat. Then she repeats, I say fat, and then you say, then the next person has to produce another rhyming word, and goes on. Okay? It just adds a little bit fun and variety to the practice of the vowels. And there are some other ready-made games or activities which we can use from those internet resources. For example, this website I found very useful. I benefit a lot from this. It's called BCC, Words and Pictures. There are a lot of ready-made games and activities, and even nursery rhymes, short poems, so that we don't have to write on our own. I'll leave it for you to explore it. And this is the website I get all those tongue twisters. Okay, that's about vowel drills. And the next activity will be CNN student news. Has anyone of you done this with your students? Okay, we also did one piece every 2 weeks, but with the aid of a worksheet, like this. This is the worksheet for the second piece of news. I deliberately chose this news coverage. It's about a Pakistani girl called Malala. Though very young, she is an activist advocating for girls' right to receive education. But then she got shot by the Taliban. You know, one of the objectives for us to choose CNN student news as one of the activities is not only to increase language exposure, but also to broaden students' horizon. They are so self-centered. I mean, most of them, sorry. And they seldom, they hardly care about what's going on out there in a different world from theirs. Anyway, go back to English teaching. First of all, before before students actually listen to the news, I will go through the vocabulary. Usually I chose 10 words, 10 typical words, and make sure they understand them, so that these words will not hinder their understanding. And then I kind of prepared students for the upcoming news by asking some questions, as well as give them background information. For example, a very brief definition of Taliban. Then we would watch the news. I usually played it twice. After all, it's spoken at a very fast speed, and I think students need a second chance to listen to it. And after they finish listening or watching, we go to comprehension check. And if there's still time, I'll have students do group discussion, follow-up discussion. I'd like to say something about the discussion. I used to hesitate to give students the chance, the time to report on their group, on their discussion results, because it's extremely time-consuming. Say if you give each group 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and there are altogether usually 7 groups, then it will take half of your class hour. But fortunately, I got a good idea when I was in Canada. I learned that the whole thing can be done in a different way. We can have one member from each group to move to another group and report on their discussion results. All the sharing is done at the same time. So it will altogether take us only 3 to 5 minutes. And if you think it's not enough, you can have students do a second round. Then the same student or a different student got the chance to practice again. I think it's a clever way. Next, I have students do vocabulary storytelling. This is related to the textbook. Basically, it's still a group work, and students have to work in group to create a story using textbook new words and sentence patterns. Each group is responsible for 1 unit, and I usually divide the class into 10 groups, responsible for unit 2 to 10. Unit 2 to 11. Well, I did the first unit as a demonstration, and I skipped unit 12 because students are usually busy at the end of the semester. Anyway, the more words they use, the higher score they get, and they must be prepared. They must be ready for an oral presentation, while the other students will give feedback with rubric forms. By the way, I did correct their draft. They have to give me their draft, and I will correct it, because I don't want students to hear wrong sentences. And next is short speech. Every Monday, students were required to do a 1-minute short speech on a given topic. And it goes like this. I'll have 2 people working together, and one talks non-stop about the topic I give them, while the other just listens. Then, when 1 minute is up, they switch roles. Then I will ask 2 to 3 students share what they have heard in case they did not pay attention. And then I will pick 3 students to come to the front and do the speeches again in public. So they have 2 times. They have 2 chances. The topic can be very simple. It can be the weekend activities, or my family. And sometimes I also give them topics related to the random cyber listening test, because this is one of the independent learning tasks. They were supposed to do it at home, 2 weeks per week, 2 tests per week, and they were free to choose. Students were free to choose from all these various tests. I guess some of you may have been familiar with this website, so can I just skip it? Okay. Please, don't do this to me. But they have to keep a record, and I will check it regularly. And the record may go like this. They have to write down the date, category, name of the quiz, and their score. There are 3 scores here because if a student fails to score over 80 or 75, depending on the numbers of the tests, then have to do it again. In other words, if they got more than 1 question wrong, they would have to do it again. So they write down their score 1, score 2. If they still fail a second time, they could just go to they could just log on to the transcript before they try the third time. That would make things easier for them. Originally, I did not include this item called What I Learned. The Canadian teacher gave us this idea, and their record form only include the first line. But I gradually discover some students' forms questionable, if you know what I mean. Okay, so I think to make things a little bit difficult for them to fake their records, I add this item. And they needed to put down what they learned from the conversations. It can be a piece of information, knowledge, or just simply new words and phrases. Okay. 2 teachers are like police officers, so sometimes they are asked to share what they learned in the time for speech. As for text-related listening activities, I've tried use the text as listening materials, or teach readings by storytelling. I'll talk about this later. Or review patterns with songs. I guess many of you have done this. And I also practice patterns with speaking text in games. We used to have students do a lot of paperwork. Practice the pattern with paper and pen. But in this semester, I wanted to have them practice the pattern with their mouth. They have to speak it. They have to say it. One of the activities called Find Someone Who. You work your questions with the target pattern into a questionnaire or something. So students have to walk around the classroom getting people's signature. Asking questions and getting people's signature if their answer is yes. So during the process, they would have to keep asking these questions and at the same time practicing these patterns again and again. This is one activity, and the second one is called no name for this. It's just a simple game. When we were practicing, neither do I. I play a small game like this. They have to listen to me say the first part of the sentence, while they have to finish the latter part of the sentence using their classmate's name. For example, I say, Christine was in class yesterday, and then I point at a student, then she has to say, so-and-so was in class too, using their classmate's name. The reason why I did this is just to make the drill a little bit more meaningful and relevant to them. And another activity I did for the same pattern is more like a quiz show. This one is welcome. This one was welcomed by my students. I would say the sentence like Los Angeles is in California, and any students who knows the answer can raise her hand and say, so is another city. So is San Francisco. For example, snakes don't have legs. Anyone? It's not as easy as you think. Yeah, good. Neither do fish. Yeah. things like that. And this one is funny. Chili tastes hot. And one of my students said, so do I. And another student in another class said, so does Christine. That's me. Okay. And of course, I gave her extra bonus. And the next activity is for practicing as soon as. I prepared two verb charts. I made it into a worksheet and divided students up. Then give each group a worksheet. And then I explained the rule after I went through all those verbs, making sure that that the students understood everything. The rule is like this. They will have 2 dice for each group, then they roll the dice to decide on which verb to use in the first part of the sentence. And then they have to decide on their own which verb to use for the second part, as well as the classmate's name as the subject. Let me give an example. Suppose I rolled the dice and I got 6, breakaway, which is one of students' favorites. And then I decide to use M, fall in love with. And I would like to use Christine as the subject. Then my sentence would go like this. As soon as I broke wind, Christine fell in love with me. Okay? It makes a hilarious sentence. But I was just trying to make the boring practice of sentence pattern into a little bit fun, more enjoyable. But still, we have to make sure they really learn the pattern, so they have to make 2 sentences and write them down. And I collect the worksheets. And if you have time, you can have students, some active students to come up to the front and do the activity again, but this time they have to act it out when they say the sentence. So it will be very hilarious. Okay. I also try to review vocabulary with word games, and these are some of the games we learn in Canada. But I'm afraid I don't have the time. And teach reading by storytelling is basically like this. We divide the class into 2 halves and send the other half to a different class. So 2 groups of students were in 2 different classrooms, listening to 2 teachers telling different stories. Okay? So you need a teaching aid, or you need to cooperate with another teacher. After they finish listening to the stories, those sent out will come back to the classroom, and then the 2 groups of students exchange the stories in pairs. So in this activity involves attentive listening, active listening, and speaking. And after they finish the sharing, they have to complete this mind map. Well, it may be my personal problem. I always feel, 不放心. So I had to make them do something in the written form so that I can check. Anyway, but after this mind maps, I spent very little time teaching the reading of that lesson. Okay, post-action evaluation. After all these practices, the students improve. As for the listening part, they did the same test again, and 35 out of 40 did better. These are some of the students' test results. And 12 persons gained more than 10 points. So for listening part, they did make progress. And for the pronunciation part, I had them read the poem again And after comparing the two recordings, I found 2/3 improved. More or less, okay? I mean, they made fewer mistakes in the vowels. Actually, in my daily observation, I found some people make visible, or perhaps we should say audible progress when they were asked to read the text aloud. And I also observed that, unfortunately, they made limited progress in speaking, which is actually we can predict. But I did observe less anxiety when they were asked to do listening and speaking. And from their feedback, it's like this. Most of them, I mean more than half, were positive about their progress, but still insecure about communicating English. So the result is improved pronunciation, yes, probably. Increased listening proficiency, yes, fortunately. Enlarged vocabulary, I think so. But strengthened speaking skill, not really. As for confidence in communication, the anxiety-free classroom we had hoped for, question mark. Okay, finally my personal reflection. Well, as I said, repetition of routine helped reduce anxiety. And I did get the conclusion from this experiment. Time is the greatest enemy, as one of my classmates had pointed out. Then it takes patience and a bit of persuasion to get students used to no longer being spectators. At least at first they resisted, but then you just force them. I'm sorry, I'm a mean teacher. You just force them, and little by little they'll get used to it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you for staying here. I'll try to finish my presentation on time, okay? My topic today is how to increase students' learning motivation, and this is a picture of my school. Here is an overview of my presentation. Part 1 is purpose of study, Part 2, literature review, and in Part 3, I'll explain the syllabus design of this action plan, and in Part 4, I'll introduce the materials and activities I used in class, and finally, I'll share the overall findings and reflections of my action plan. Okay. But first of all, I need to show you the background information of my students. I chose Class 106 to do my action plan because it's a special class. And students of this class are interested either in art or music. They are interested, not gifted. Okay, and the class size is a bit smaller than my other classes, and they are all freshmen. And it is done in an elective course, and the class hours are 15 minutes every week, and it lasts for 1 semester. The purpose of study, the main goal is to try to find out how to increase students' learning motivation because I believe that most learning and behavioral problems all comes from their lack of learning motivation. And my second goal is to try to find out how to enhance students' listening and speaking skills. Okay. What you see here is what we learned or reviewed at UBCELI. I'll quickly go through each one. Okay. For VARC learning styles theory, I have my students to do a VARC questionnaire for teenagers to help them and help me to find out their preferred learning styles. And it turns out that most of them are multi-model learners just like me. So I try to incorporate all kinds of teaching materials and activities in my action plan. Okay. And the next one is Bloom's taxonomy. I believe you are all familiar with this one, so I'll just try to quote what my teacher Andy says. She said that if we always focus on the bottom two levels of understanding and remembering, then we are just dumbing down our students. So I try to force my students to do the applying, analyzing, evaluating, and finally creating to hopefully make them smarter. Okay. And the next one, this is a paper that I found on Joe's website. Joe is a teacher we observed at UBC. This is a very useful paper. If you are interested in teaching culture, then I highly recommend this one for you. I use these as guidelines for my curriculum design. Okay. And then let's move on to the syllabus design. My syllabus can be divided into 3 parts, and part 1 is pronunciation training. It's supposed to build my students' confidence in speaking English. And part 2, which is the main part of this curriculum, in each week we will focus on a specific topic. And the topics I chose are music, fashion, TV series, street art, and picture books, because I believe that my students may be interested in these topics. And finally, they have to do a final project to show that what they learned in this class and to use their creativity. Okay. And the materials I used in class include YouTube videos, songs, TV series and talk shows, TED Talks, and picture books. Okay, here are just some of the YouTube videos that I used in class. I'd like to show you what I did with these videos. So I chose one to do a demonstration. For this one, I give my students a worksheet to finish. And please look at part 3 here. I show them this video. It's called UK Street Fashion, London. I chose this video on purpose because my students can have a chance to listen to British accent because they are unfamiliar with it. And before we watch the video, I taught my students this new words because they were going to hear this words in the video. And then I asked them to think about this question first. Okay, I want them to find out in the video who impressed you the most, and describe his or her look and explain why. Then we watch the video. I'll show you a little bit of it.
Hi guys, I'm Nikki Short, investigating London street fashion. We're here on Regent Street to see what the capital has to offer style-wise. We're going to be chatting to some people, see what they're wearing, where it came from, and be finding out what is hot. I'm here with Kwesi. Kwesi, how old are you?
I'm 21.
And what do you do?
I'm a chef.
Are you? And what brings you to London today?
I'm just on my way to shopping, you know. Go to Zara, check it out.
So you're shopping today?
Yeah.
And
Okay, it's about that. And they have to answer this question, and I'll play the video for 2 or 3 times. And then they have to observe the interaction between the interviewer and the interviewees. And they have to jot down useful sentences for the interview. And later on, they have to do an interview for their classmates. And that's what I did. Okay. And the next one. Okay, for songs, here are the songs I introduced in class. And you might have noticed that I chose young pop stars on purpose because I believe that my students may be able to relate to these singers and lyrics more easily. And it turned out worked really well. Okay, we don't have time to see the video, so let's move on. Okay, for TV series, we watched the premiere episode of Glee and the Halloween episode of Friends. For this one, I give them a worksheet like this in advance. They have to answer the questions before watching the show. For example, do you know what the L gesture means? Because you can see a lot of gestures here. And they have to answer simple questions like natural names with the character photos. And they have to rank the songs they like in the episode. And finally, they have to answer these questions. Okay. Something like that. And for talk shows, we watched video clips of The Ellen Show and Jimmy Kimmel Live. I'll show you one of the Ellen Show worksheet. Okay, we watched this video clip on the premiere day of the final Twilight movie because many of the girls are huge Twilight fans. Okay. And this is a video that Ellen interviewed the 2 male characters, Robert Pattinson and Taylor Lautner. And I have them watch this first, read this first, and then watch the video. I'll show you a little bit of the video.
Well, first of all, they saw the movie, they loved it, you loved the movie. And I think the people that have not seen it, there's a surprise ending. It's different than what people would expect.
Is it? I haven't seen it.
Yes, it's different than the books, right? So it's a surprise. Some people may, but they're not going to be upset.
No, I don't think fans will be upset with it because we don't change anything. I mean, the books are their baby, so we can't really touch it too much. But it's fun, and there definitely is a twist.
Yeah. Okay, it's not easy for my students, but with the help of this worksheet, it becomes easier. And then I have them to think about what they said in the video. And if they were interested in the video, I show them what they can watch next at home. Then I help them watch the 2 TED Talks. It's quite challenging, but I ask them simple and general questions, so it won't be so difficult. Okay, finally, picture books. I brought these books to class, and I assigned each group to have a 1 minute report on each book, and then I have them vote for who did the best, and the worksheet looks like this. Okay. So they have to jot down some impressive parts from the presentation of their classmates. Okay. And for the activities, I believe you are all familiar with group discussion, games and contests, interviews and surveys, so I'll just focus on the last 2 ones. Okay, so action logs is like a notebook in which students have to record what they did and reflect on what they learned during the class. And it looks like this. This is what my students did. Can you see it? As you can see, I got some instant positive response from my students, which makes me think that it's all worth it. Okay. And the other one, okay, I think we don't have time to read it through. It looks like this. So they can have a record for what they learned in class. I think it's helpful for them to be more responsible of their own learning. Okay. And the other box is what I learned from Christina, our teacher at UBC. It's very easy. Whenever a student did something nice, I'll give them a lottery ticket and they'll write their name on it, and I'll drop the lottery ticket in the lottery box. And in the end of the semester, I'll just draw the lottery so they can get the prize you see here. The last part is overall findings. Okay, I have my students to do the GPT intermediate listening test. And you can see that in September, they can get 40% correct on average. However, in December, they can get 60% correct on average. I think it's a kind of an improvement. And it might be worth mentioning that this class did much better than my other two classes in monthly exams. So I'm wondering if their higher motivation has something to do with it. And I have them do a questionnaire. Part one is to answer some questions about their general reflections on this class. Okay, so for example, the first question is, after taking this course, my learning motivation is increased. If they disagree, they have to check 1. And if they agree, they have to check 5. And the result is quite positive, I believe. And the next one. Okay, for the materials, all of them like the songs, and they think songs are helpful for them. And I think TED Talks might be a little bit too difficult for them. And the activities, you can see that they like games and contests the best. They especially like the game of Jeopardy. They got really excited about it, but it's really time-consuming. Okay, and they hate to do presentation, but they also admit that it's helpful for them. Okay, and finally, for group work, only 1 or 2 of them dislike group works. They prefer to work alone, but most of them like group work. So finally, my personal reflections. I think the challenges include that course preparation is extremely time-consuming, and for one person to monitor 27 people at the same time is very difficult. And time management is not easy, especially when we were playing games or contests. And finally, multiple assessments are not easy for teachers or students because they have to do self or peer evaluation. But overall, I think the process, the whole process is satisfying and it's worth trying. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so are there some last questions for our presenters today? No questions? If not, I just have, I think, 2 comments that I do want to make. For the audience today, after you hear all these presentations today, please don't go home and start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to change my entire practice. Look at what these teachers are doing. We don't want you to go home thinking you have to change everything to make learning interesting. I think if you learn one thing, take one thing at a time, changes will take time. So don't feel like you have to do everything like as these people did. These people were required, they were obligated to do some things. And I think they did more than they were required to. They did a lot more. So I really need to congratulate them. But don't go home and start thinking, after this trip, I'm going to be like you guys, and I'm going to make myself crazy, work hard, and you know, and spend a lot of time making learning interesting for students. We do think learning should be interesting for students, and we hope if you can get one idea that inspires you, try it at home. I really think, try it in your class at home. We do think that, it is taking small steps at a time. It is really worth it. And when you see smiles on the students' faces, I think, grades can't tell everything. It's that motivation that's inside, I think, that drives learning. Secondly, I want to thank the presenters. You really have done a wonderful job, even though you probably hate the process in the meantime, while you were going through the process. But we do hope that you guys can use this opportunity to learn, not just from teachers at UBC and the schools abroad, but learn from each other. One of the very important goals that we didn't keep pushing was the opportunity for teachers from all over Taiwan to meet each other. And that will help you grow professionally. And I think that interaction among different teachers is another very valuable thing that you can learn from this kind of program. Not just from our program, but from attending different workshops for teachers. And this conference isn't just for the presentations, but it's an opportunity for all of you to meet each other, to talk to each other about your current practice. And I think continuous dialoguing among professionals, with each other, with your teachers, with your supervisors, with a lot of people, I think is a great way to release some of your pressure from school and from teaching. Teaching, I must say, isn't easy, but I think if you have people who are like you, who go through the same kind of thing every day, it is a little, I think comfort for all of you. And same for us. We at a university, we're always under pressure. We're always catching up on things. But I think the supportive environment is very important for continual teacher growth. And that's what we are hoping we will continue to do. We started 2 years ago, and we hope we will continue to push that kind of belief of lifelong learning from each other. So please do not view us as the school that pushes everybody. We don't intend on giving anybody pressure, but we do want to provide a supportive learning environment for teachers as well as for students that we teach, right? And I hope I will see you guys maybe next year as a presenter, as an audience. We do welcome any kind of participation. And do let us know if you have any questions or feedback on our conference today. Will be greatly appreciated. And I hope to see all of you